Amber. Okay, Sue. Close your eyes. Make a wish and come with me, and we'll be in a world.
Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz vocalist Amber Weekes. She took some time out to talk about her 2020 CD called Pure Imagination. She has Latin and Caribbean roots and is a native of Los Angeles, raised by parents born and raised in Harlem, and she was swayed early on in her life by the likes of Ella Fitzgerald, Vaughan, Shirley Bassey, Lena Horne, Oscar Brown Jr., and the very early recordings of Barbra Streisand. She has sung ever since childhood, and she has a lot to give to the world and already has. So please get to know her and dig this interview, my friends.
Amber, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I appreciate it.
Sure, I'm very excited.
Me too. So let's talk about Pure Imagination. Give me an idea of what your artistic vision was for this project.
Oh boy, there's several different things. I've been working with Sue Rainey, who is a wonderful and underappreciated singer of her own right, for about 20 years. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was have the opportunity to do a duet with her. But the other thing is I hadn't recorded in a very long time, and so I really was interested in putting together a group of tunes that represented me as an artist and as a human being. And so I was interested in essentially putting together a kaleidoscope that gives people a vision of who I am as an individual, what my commitments and my interests are, and the romantic side of me at the same time, and a piece of me that has a sense of humor. My way of really diving into my sense of humor and humorous insight into life was to select 3 of Oscar Brown Jr.'s tunes. And that allowed me to do those things, but it also allowed me to salute another artist whose work I've appreciated since I was a very little girl. And Oscar Brown Jr. was important in his time, and at the same time, his work is truly timeless. And so I wanted to be able to acknowledge him. I did get to know him toward the end of his life, and I wanted to be another conduit for his work so that people could again celebrate everything that he did. And I also wanted the opportunity to work with some people I've known for a long time, like Trevor Ware, who produced a number of the tunes, and Mark Cargill, who's an amazing violinist, but he's also a tremendous producer and string arranger, and I've known him since I was 19 years old, and it was just a gift to be able to work with him. I even wanted to give a nod to the city of New Orleans. My stepmother is from there, and I have a lot of attachment to the city, especially after Hurricane Katrina. And so I did choose to do one tune which was in the second line style and have someone from New Orleans produce that for me. There's something kind of special about what they do, and of course I'm not from there, and I didn't want to make a cartoon of it, but I certainly wanted to celebrate the music of New Orleans because it is, the birthplace of jazz. So essentially wanted to create a project that was multifaceted, but also gave me the opportunity to really express my romantic spirit in things like the duet with Vaughan, the way he makes me feel, and the song When He Makes Music. And give people something that they could enjoy in a number of different activities, whether they're just sitting and having a glass of wine, taking a road trip, just relaxing in some other way, and still give them something to tap their toe to here and there in the album.
Perfect. So you grew up in L.A. Give me an idea of your childhood and, how you got involved with jazz and music.
Oh my. Well, that's really all about my parents and the human beings that they, I will say, are. My father has passed away, but my mother's still around. But they were both, they both grew up in Harlem. And so music and art was a big part of the tapestry of their lives, both actively and just being in the atmosphere of Harlem at the time of their childhood. My dad went to music and art, but even as a child, he played piano by ear. He sang. His sister, just older than him, she sang as well. They were surrounded by musicians. My grandparents owned a diner in Harlem where musicians such as Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Lena Horne, and others would come in on a frequent basis. And in fact, Daddy repeatedly told me the story of how when he was a teenager working the overnight shift at the restaurant, Duke Ellington would come in after his gigs, and Daddy would serve him fried egg sandwiches. So even like on a personal level, without even hearing the music, it was just part of my father's life. And Daddy played the trombone. As he grew up, he loved Frank Sinatra. He was a Frank Sinatra clone. And at some point when he was in the Army, somebody did have a conversation with him about a recording contract, but being a child of the Depression, my father wanted to do something different than take the risk of going into music. But my father sang all of his life. My mother studied piano. She also has more of like a classical voice. So the two of them together, there was music all around us as we were kids. My mother was determined that we would be exposed to every type of music that there was. Jazz was special to both of my parents, so we heard Ella and Sarah and Duke, and of course some of the other folks. Billie Holiday was a big one with friends of my dad's. So we heard it a lot. In addition to that, we were raised around jazz musicians, so we were encouraged to listen and participate in singing. And so my sisters and I, we all sang as young people. And then as my sisters grew up, they stopped singing and they pursued other careers, but music is just something that's important to all of us. You know, my parents were really determined that it would just be in our blood. And even both my parents were great about making us pay attention to not only the melodies but the lyrics of things. And one of my favorite stories about my mother, and one of the other reasons why there's 3 of Oscar Brown Jr.'s tunes on the album, is that we were little girls and Oscar's tune, The Snake, came on the radio, and it was very old at the time. But my mother made us stop and listen to the song. And that was when I fell in love with Oscar's work. But words meant something, melodies meant something. And so music just became a very important part of the atmosphere, whether we were at home doing other things and having the music in the background, sitting and listening to it, and my parents giving us insights on it, or if we were actually singing ourselves. I sang all the way through school and have been studying privately for a very long time. So that's the nutshell of the music.
What was one of the first live jazz shows you saw that blew your doors down?
Oh my goodness. That's so hard because, again, we were raised around jazz musicians, and so even as a young girl or an older teenager, I did the opportunity while I was underage to sneak into jazz performances when I wasn't supposed to. And so some of the people I saw were people whose names no one would recognize. I think there are people that I followed that may surprise people. I think, like George Benson was someone I saw early because I could go to see him without having to go into a club. Oscar Brown Jr. was another one of those I got to see early. Again, I was underage, but managed to get into the club. I think he would be the first one. There was a club out here in Santa Monica, and I already knew of his work, as I'd mentioned, and so I got to see Oscar, and the art of his delivery really affected me profoundly.
What do you like best about being a singer?
Some people may find this to be a little odd, and they may blame it on the fact that I'm a Californian. But to me, being a singer is a spiritual experience. And especially since a lot of what I do is jazz standards, there's something about how a lyric or a melody impacts me and being able to internalize it and then deliver it to the audience and really want to impact people profoundly on an emotional level so that it heals them or it gives them the opportunity to reflect on something that may not have been so easy without the sound of the music and the lyrics to give them the opportunity to sink into something or to remember something that had an impact on them. I love connecting with people. I'm definitely a people person. Being a singer and connecting with people on that type of a level where we're having a collective experience is something that I really enjoy, and it has a profound meaning to me.
Tell me this, why do you love jazz?
I love it because it's an American art form. It's something that this country has given to the world. I love it because while there are rules to the music, there's room for you to bring yourself to it, especially when it comes to the Great American Songbook, and then other artists like Oscar Brown Jr., where you have these lyrics that can be universal. It allows people from many different walks of life to have something for themselves in it. And then as jazz artists, whether it's someone like Charlie Parker or me or Nancy Wilson or Ella Fitzgerald, we could all do the same song, and we're all going to bring something of ourselves to it, and then people can have their own experience inside of it. And I think it's a little bit different than some of the other art forms. I was a violist for a little while as a child, and classical music is wonderful, and I love to go to classical concerts. And in fact, I had season tickets to the Hollywood Bowl this summer, and all of the shows that I saw were classical, and I love that music. But really, even though people can bring something of themselves to classical music, jazz allows you to improvise a little bit, to phrase a little bit differently, to bring yourself to it profoundly. And I think it's unique, universal and individual all at the same time.
Absolutely. So, has there been a performance in particular that you had that was just magic? You got off stage and you were like, wow, I had no idea that was going to happen.
Yes, I did a show at Vitello's in San Fernando Valley several years ago, and like the whole show was just perfect. I was definitely like in the moment. The musicians were all in the moment, and it was everything I could have hoped for and far beyond my imagination. I think, but there is one particular moment, one particular song, one particular night that for me was the most magical of all. There was a beautiful restaurant in Long Beach, California called the Sky Room, and it was an Art Deco restaurant, and it had a bandstand, and I could stand on the stage and I could look out of one window and see the Long Beach skyline, and then look out and see the water. And there was this lovely young couple in the restaurant, and the husband asked me if I would sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow for his wife. It was her birthday, and it's her favorite song. And I know the song. I never performed it. And this is the great thing about, jazz. You can do things kind of off the cuff. And I never performed the song, and part of it is because to me the song is Judy Garland, but personally, my sister Dawn absolutely loves The Wizard of Oz, and I'm really close to my sisters, and I've always had apprehension about doing the song because it's so much a memory of my sister Dawn when we were kids, and even telling you now I'm getting welled up. But I was asked to do it. It meant something to them, and so I did the song. Now, this is a restaurant with, I don't know, a few hundred people in it. There's a bar in the middle with, a blender because somebody wants a pina colada or a margarita or whatever. I took a deep breath. I looked over at Bradley Young, who was playing piano for me that night, and I was like, okay, they want Over the Rainbow. I did it, and the whole restaurant stopped. And I was so committed to really delivering the song to the best of my ability, and absolutely without, not wanting to imitate Judy Garland, or just doing the song and bringing all of myself to it. And I was just totally in that moment, giving everything that I could, and it was really extraordinary to have the whole restaurant stop. It was like, three-quarters of the way through, and I realized that there was absolute silence in the restaurant. When I was done, it was almost like an out-of-body experience, and then I almost cried. And then the cherry on the sundae was when I took the break after that set, the husband came to me. He thanked me, and he said, I was going to get up on the dance floor and dance with my wife while you sang the song. He said, but the way that you did it, all I could do was listen.
That's a great story. So everything's going to come down to this. Everyone has their perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
I'm someone who really embraces life. I'm a creative being. I really, at my core, my commitment is to being a source of divine female healing energy, and one of the ways that that's expressed, the biggest way that that's expressed is through my music. And I am someone who's deeply committed to people being healed and feeling loved.
Wonderful. I love that answer. Amber, it's been a joy to talk with you. Thank you for opening up about your new album, about your life and music. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the greatest singers in Los Angeles, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Amber for her time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit NeonJazz at YouTube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, Enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Could I go too?
You gotta come along. I think it's gonna be fun.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. We're gonna have fun.
Neon Jazz.